Even though it's not Friday, Pat and I are continuing our Locked On Penguins top 25 of the last 25 years, plus getting to your takes. That's coming up right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Marleau. You can follow him on all social media platforms at Synonym for Wet. You can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins, and you can find the show on Instagram at LockedOn_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Pat, we had a lot of fun going through the honorable mentions of the Locked On Penguins top 25 of the last 25 years. But now we're really going to get into some more fun today. These 5 players that we're going to get into, this is the fun category of, oh yeah, these guys did play here. And starting us off at number 5, we're going to go from 5 to 1 over these next couple of seconds before getting to your takes to end the show. Starting things off at number 5, Miroslav Shatan, one of my favorite underrated dudes during the Sidney Crosby, Evgeni Malkin, Chris Letang era. Played for the Pittsburgh Penguins during the 2008-2009 season. Had 17 goals, 36 points in 65 games. And he opened the scoring against the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 1 of the 2009 Eastern Conference Final. Joe Benatti's call will always be stuck in my head. The start of it, Shatan's got to step on the D, and then he just absolutely works Cam Ward with that move. Again, one of my favorite underrated goals of that run. And whenever you think of a random player that played for the Penguins, he is one of them that comes to mind right away.
He really is. And a couple things before I wax poetic about Miro Shatan. One, this list is so born of our draft live stream where we're just going to remember some dudes for the next couple of weeks while we wait for training camp. And the other thing is, Hunter said we're starting at 5. There is no order for this. It's just we have a Google Doc. His name is sitting at 5. There's your behind the scenes look. There's no specific ranking for this. It's just like we said when we did the honorable mentions episode, that we're not just going to do 1 to 25 where it's like, here's the top number 1 guy of the last 25 years and here's the 25th best. We're putting it in random categories. And obviously today's category is, oh yeah, he played here. The biggest thing that I remember about Shatan was during that 08-09 run, he got sent to the AHL in near the end of the season.
That's right.
And and Ray Shiro talked about this. I can't remember where it was, if it was an interview or in a book about the 09 final, but I remember reading it. And he basically said, like, he had to sit down with him and say, listen, this is for salary cap purposes. It is for roster size purposes. When the playoffs get here, you're coming back. So I need you to go down and be a leader for a couple of weeks with the baby Penguins, show these guys how to be a pro. And the minute the playoffs start, you're going to be back in the NHL. And that's pretty much what happened. But he wasn't an every game player in that postseason. But when he was called upon, he was pretty darn good for them. And it was near the end of his career. So they were getting him a championship. They were making sure he had a role. And he deserves a lot of credit for being a leader for a lot of the younger players, as well as the Black Aces that year, because he spent a lot of time with them and basically taught them, hey, this is how it works in the NHL. This is what you got to do to get to the NHL. This is what you got to do to stay in the NHL. So not only did he have that awesome moment in the Eastern Conference Final, put up some good numbers with the team in the season, but he was a really critical leader for that 2009 Stanley Cup.
I agree. And he finished that run 1 goal, 6 points in 17 games. He ended his career at the Bruins the next year. He's actually really even better in the playoffs for that. 5 goals, 10 points in 13 games. That was his last season in the NHL. But I agree with you. Just a really, again, a fun, underrated player to watch during that run. And you also said it, a good leader in that locker room as well for some of the younger players on that team. Coming up next, we kind of have a little bit of a tie here for this next spot, though. Pat also said it's not really 1 through 5, but I still kind of see it as a little bit of a tie. Brendan Morrow and Christian Ehrhoff. Remember, people, Christian Ehrhoff was signed right when Jim Rutherford really took the reins during the 2014 offseason. He was brought in, played that season with the Penguins, and then he moved on to play for the Kings and the Blackhawks during the 15-16 season. But 49 games for the Penguins, 3 goals, 14 points in 49 games. And then Brendan Morrow, of course, he was acquired during the 2013 trade deadline, along with Douglas Murray and Jerome McGinley. More on Douglas Murray coming up in a little bit, by the way. But Brendan Morrow, again, at the end of his career, Pat, still fun to see at least that he got to be a Penguin for a little bit, had a top 9 role a bit. And then for Ehrhoff, was unfortunate that it didn't work out, but he still played almost 50 games for the Penguins during the 14-15 season. It's funny, that was the offseason before that season when Rutherford went out, signed him. Remember Steve Downey? He brought him in. Blake Como, who I will never say a bad word about that signing. I thought he was actually a really good depth player for the Penguins during that season, even though that season was just not very good, to say the least. But that was the offseason when Rutherford made those short-term signings.
Yeah, and the thing, Brendan Morrow, like you said, that was cool to see near the end of his career. Always a solid kind of middle 6, top 9 guy who brought all the stuff you needed to be a good team in the postseason, did a lot of the dirty work. And he really did a lot of that as a Penguin in his short tenure. When you look back at that 13 run, as cursed as it was at the end, Morrow was a very steady soldier for that team. And if you want to put the loss on anybody, it certainly doesn't go on him. He played his role and played it almost to perfection. I feel so bad for Christian Ehrhoff, man, because there was so much talent and so much potential there. He just had such issues with concussions and other injuries, and he was never able to get it back on track. Because I remember when Rutherford signed him, I was like, this is kind of high risk, but high reward, because if he finds that form that he's capable of, as well as shows he's recovered from the concussions, you're really going to have a talented player on a very good deal. And it just, unfortunately, that high risk, quote unquote, happened, wasn't able to refine his form. And I felt bad just because it seemed like a guy that really fit in with what the Penguins were trying to do then, but it just didn't work out. And then to your overall point, I remember having a conversation with former Pens blog editor Rich Miller about a guy like Blake Como, because this was around the time when analytics and everything were really starting to take shape. And everybody was falling in love with Blake Como. Like, oh, you can't lose this guy. You got to hold on to him. And Rich and I were kind of saying, no, this is the exact guy you don't want to fall in love with. And it's not because he's bad. It's not because we don't think he's good. It's because you got to find the next one. You got to find the next depth guy on a deal who's going to overperform it, rather than, oh, he goes off for 1 year and then you give him 5 years, and for the next 5 years, he's not meeting that contract. So that's what I always remember about a guy like Como.
Yeah, I mean, Como, again, he was good that season. 16 goals, 31 points in 61 games. Though it's so funny, I was just looking up some of the stats from that 2014-15 team. Steve Downey was actually next on the production list. 14 goals, 28 points in 72 games. Do you want to guess how many penalty minutes he had that season?
Was it triple digits, or it was at least close, wasn't it?
It was triple digits. I'll see if you can get it.
I'm going to say 114.
Oh, it's way more than that, my friend. 238 penalty minutes for Steve Downey during that season. Again, he was in the box a lot. He had some interesting hits, but he at least produced. He was 7th on the team in scoring that season. So
he was basically, for that time period, a diet Matt Cook, where it wasn't he crossed the line more than he should have, but you were willing to excuse it a little bit because you looked at his production and went, yeah, I mean, he's still kind of scoring too,
right.
even though you really shouldn't defend anything that he was doing.
Also, I did not realize that Brandon Sutter had 21 goals that season. That's interesting.
Sutter's
Sucks that he didn't pan out the way we all wanted him to, but I totally forgot that he had a 20-plus goal season that year. But hey, that'll do it for this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to continue with the list of, oh yeah, these guys play here. That's coming up right after this. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you have been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endlessly scrolling trying to find the best deal? Game Time's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you. Ever wonder what your review will actually look like before you buy the tickets? Well, the Game Time app shows you a full seat view so there are no surprises. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets. And with Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-hosts, Patrick and Pat. Let's get into the next player on our list, a.k.a. the crankshaft, Douglas Murray, also acquired at the 2013 trade deadline for, you know the meme, Murray for 2 second-round picks? What's going on? But hey, he scored, even though they lost to the Bruins, he scored one of my favorite goals of the Penguins' run to the final when he just roofed it past Evgeni Malkin in Game 3 of that series against the Islanders. You're thinking he's coming down. Oh, he's not really going to shoot this. Oh no, he shot it. He just absolutely blew it past Nabokov. Still one of my favorite goals. And even though he wasn't that good, it was still fun to see him, throw some hits, get that nice goal. Played for them for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to take some enjoyment out of hockey, especially when it comes to the ridiculousness of it. And was Douglas Murray a good defenseman? Probably not. Even though 2013 was a little bit before we were really moving into an era that was based a lot more on foot speed and skating, you could still get away a little bit with being a defenseman that threw massive hits and kind of that's all you did. And the other thing about that was that Penguins team in 13 was so deep that you could have, the Penguins did as much. You could bury him as your sixth defenseman. You didn't have to play him 22 minutes a night. You could play him 14 minutes a night when you needed a little bit of a spark and you needed somebody to go out and get put into the third row. Hey, Doug, go out there and absolutely blast someone. And he would do it. And that team, like I said, was so deep. And sometimes you just have to put the analysis to the side and just go, this dude's big. He throws hits. Who cares? Let's enjoy it.
Looking back, probably would not have traded the 2 seconds at the time for him. But hey, he was fun watching him be physical, had that cool goal against the Islanders in Game 3 at the Coliseum. How old was I at the time? I was 2013. I was going to turn 16 later that year. Late 15-year-old Hunter was loving it. So I
was a 22-year-old goofy college student. And between the Ginla trade, it was just, it was such a fun time. It was so much fun. And yeah, the memory at the end is terrible, but that run with all the trades, how good they were in that lockout shortened season, it was just a fun time.
The thing I'm still most mad about is that after they got swept, and I've told this story before on the pod, I'll tell it again though, if anyone maybe missed it. After they got swept, my mom came downstairs and she showed me her phone and she was like, almost in tears, like, yeah, we had tickets to take you up to Pittsburgh for game 5. And I'm like, really? Yeah, really had to tell me this now? Because I kept asking since I was out of school the night of game 4. Yes, that was my last day of school, was the night of game 4. And game 5 was going to be later that weekend if they were to win that game. And I kept asking, like, hey, it's a weekend game. Like, let's go. Let's do it. And my mom was not really, she was kind of playing back and forth about it, but then she eventually apparently bought me the tickets, and then she was obviously sad, and then I was sad too. So there's that story again for everyone that maybe did not know about that. But moving on to the final 2 players on this list, Pat, let's wax a little poetic about Gary Roberts. Acquired during the 2006-2007 season, played with the Penguins in 2007-2008, and then ended his career at the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2008-2009. Another player who was at the end of his career, but for a depth piece, still at least fine. Like, he wasn't as good as he used to be, but still fine. I mean, you look at the numbers for the Penguins. During the 08 season, he had 3 goals, 15 points in 38 games. During the 06-07 season, after he got traded to the Penguins, he actually had 7 goals, 13 points in 19 games. So fairly fine stuff, I would say.
Yeah. This is, everybody stay with me. This is going to be a little silly, but stay with me. Gary Roberts walked so Patrick Hornquist could run, because the young Penguins, when Gary Roberts came around, they were this young group of superstars: Crosby, Malkin, Stahl, Letang to a certain extent, Marc-Andre Fleury. They were these young, green, inexperienced, heavy expectation guys. And there weren't a ton yet, or there weren't at least good enough yet veterans to show these guys, no, this is a man's game. This is a big boy league. And Gary Roberts came in and was like, you guys want to be champions? I'm going to show you how to be champions. I'm going to show you what it takes to get to that next level. Because to this day, players still talk about training with Gary Roberts in 2025. And not like, oh, I trained with Gary Roberts 10 years ago. No, I trained with him 2 weeks ago and he kicked my ass.
Right.
This guy was a legend as a Penguin, and I will never, ever forget in 2007 when he wanted to fight, or 2008, I'm sorry, he wanted to fight the entire Ottawa roster.
That's right.
He was in the runway throwing his gloves off, doing the come and get it, come get some. He was doing the John Cena, if you want some, come get some. And everybody was like, this dude's out of his mind. But it rubbed off on him. It showed them how serious this is and what you need to do to become a champion.
100%. I love that you brought that up, because honestly, I almost forgot until you brought that back to me. So love that memory too. But we got to end this list with the most random Penguin we feel like out there that, oh yeah, he played here. And that is none other, Pat, than Patrick Marleau. Played with the Penguins during the COVID season 2019-20. Only played a little bit though. 8 games during the regular season, 1 goal, 2 points in those 8 games. Remember, he was acquired from the San Jose Sharks before he ended his career with the Sharks in 2020-21 when he only played in 56 games. So what more can you say other than that? Like, he only played a little bit, spent most of his career with the Sharks, but hey, it was fun for a little bit just to say, like, hey, Patrick Marleau played for the Penguins at some point.
Yeah, that was cool, because I remember kind of like, and this is obviously the trade happened like right before everything shut down for the pandemic. And I remember saying to people, like, listen, I get it. Like, you want to hold on to some of these futures. Even back then in 2020, I was, we were still starting to have the conversations of, hey, the end is a lot closer than the beginning for Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. So you got to keep striking while the iron's hot. And while I would have loved to have the futures and the young guys and all that, it was like, man, Patrick Marleau today is likely better than whatever these guys will be tomorrow. And I will say this, if it wasn't for the pandemic, that team was starting to find a stride. They were starting to look like a team that could make some noise. And Marleau fit in pretty well. The numbers don't back it up all that much, obviously, but if you were watching the games right before everything shut down, he was starting to find chemistry and starting to find a role on the roster. And it looked like, okay, like if he can get rolling a little bit with the playoffs on the horizon and you go into the playoffs with him, you might have something here. And then just pandemic happens, everything shuts down. The bubble playoffs were a mess. The Penguins were one of the teams where it was a pretty open secret. They did not want to be there. So they were just happy to play a few games and get a little mini COVID vacation and go back to the drudgeries of the pandemic. So it sucked, but it was cool for about a month-ish to say that Patrick Marleau was a Penguin.
Hey, it's like a nice trivia question, right? When did Patrick Marleau play for the Pittsburgh Penguins? What season was it? So, again, we had to top off the list with Marleau, but stay tuned for next week, people, because we have another really good top 5 here coming up. Dudes, we just like, you're not going to want to miss that. We also have the top 5 moments, guys, the top 5 of the Stanley Cup wins, and the top 5 of the last 25 years. You are not going to want to miss this series coming at you every Friday throughout the month of August and potentially into the first week of early September. But that'll do it for the second segment. Coming up to end the show, we're going to get to your takes for Fan Take Friday, even though it's not Thursday, but we're not recording on Friday. So that's coming up right after this. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick and Pat. We can kind of coin this segment the Evgeni Malkin segment because happy 39th birthday to Evgeni Malkin. July 31st is, of course, his birthday. Again, we are getting very old. Time flies when you're having fun. It is crazy that he is already 39. Gino, hope you're having a tremendous birthday. And we start this one off with a comment from Theodore Belmont. Happy birthday, Gino. Got to ask your favorite Gino moments. I personally think Malkin is on the post-salary cap NHL Mount Rushmore. With Crosby, Ovechkin, and McDavid, I would put him over Patrick Kane. I think I would agree with that. I will say this. I think Patrick Kane is the best American-born player ever. I think Austin Matthews has a chance to overtake him in that category, especially if he keeps scoring at the pace that he is when healthy, and also if he wins a Stanley Cup or two with Toronto. But right now that is Patrick Kane. But I think I would agree with Theodore, but Kane is also like right there. Like if you were to put Kane on there over Gino, I would at least get it, but I lean towards Malkin, top 20 to top 25 player of all time. To me, he's the second best Russian player to ever play in the NHL. Some people want to say third and maybe put Kucherov over him. I get it, even though I disagree. But some of my favorite Gino moments, of course, the spinorama goal against Carolina, the slap shot goal against Marty Baron, the biggest FU goal out there, just the way he was hit behind the net. He's cherry picking at the blue line. He's calling for the puck, and he just takes his frustration out on that puck in 2008, the time, Pat, when he literally walked through everyone on the Tampa Bay Lightning. We can keep going. Again, those are just some of my favorite goals throughout Evgeni Malkin's time. But Pat, we kind of do this every year for his birthday. So what say you? And also what say you about Theodore's take about the Mount Rushmore for his comment?
I think that's a that one snap reaction because it's his birthday and we're Penguins fans. I'm just going to say yes, but I would really want to dig into that and look at some of the post lockout numbers because I say this a lot. I think despite all the BS and all the other dumb stuff surrounding the league, the sport and all that, this is the best hockey's ever been. There is so much talent.
I agree.
Everywhere. Like I this is a bit of a tangent and I'll get back to Malkin, I promise, is people kind of get a little annoyed now or a little worried about expansion because it's happening. People dread it, run from it, destiny arrives all the same, as Thanos once said. It's going to happen, but the game is being taught and trained in such a great way now that there is so much talent that I'm not worried about the product being diluted. There is going to be a lot of really good teams and a lot of really good players over the next decade. But yeah, so snap reaction, I would say, yeah, because I'm a Penguins fan and I love Gino more than most players I've ever loved to wear a Penguins uniform. I'm going to go off the board, and I know I've brought it up on the show before. If you've never read the story, you can find it. Sam Kassan, who used to write for the Penguins website, he now, I believe, is still with the Devils. He might be somewhere else now. I'm not entirely sure. And there's other countless retellings of it. But Malkin's journey to becoming a Penguin, it's like a spy novel, man.
Yep.
Like, he essentially is going somewhere with the Russian team for a training camp for the international program. Somebody diverts him away from his team. He goes on to another flight. It takes him to, I believe, Toronto, and then that flight takes him to Los Angeles. He hides out in Los Angeles for a few days, eventually comes to Pittsburgh, signs his rookie deal, becomes a Penguin. And this was as much of a cliche Russian story as you've ever heard, because when he got drafted, his team in Magnitogorsk basically mobbed him into signing an extension. They were all excited and congratulatory. Hey, you made it to the NHL. Congratulations, Evgeni. This is so great for you. But you have to sign an extension with us. And if you don't, you're going to be responsible for the collapse of your hometown team. And it's all going to be on your shoulders. And representatives from the team refused to leave his home until he signed the deal. So for me, thinking back on all the great stuff, because we've gone over it countless times that Evgeni Malkin has done as a Penguin, the story of him becoming a Penguin is unbelievable.
Oh, 100%. I love every time you bring this up because it really is a crazy story. If you guys want to go check it out, read about it, please do. It really is a crazy story. Next up, though, another one about Gino. This comes from Michael. Hot take: Gino is going to make some people feel silly for saying he is washed up this year. Hey, man, if he was fully healthy last year and had better line mates, I think he has a 60-point season, in my opinion. And I think he will have that ability this year, at least right now. He will have better line mates. He's going into the season fully healthy. Now, will he stay healthy the whole year? To be determined. You can't predict when someone is going to get hurt. You can't tell the future. But as of right now, he will have better line mates. We still have to see what happens with Brian Rust and Rickard Rakell. We're not going to mention anything about that until something concrete happens, because I don't want to keep spitballing about stupid rumors. But I agree with Michael on that. I think he's going to be on at least a little bit of a mission this year to show that he is not quote unquote washed like some fans like to think he is.
I will nitpick a little bit. I don't, at least not from what I've seen, at least locally. Maybe this is happening nationally, but I don't see a lot of people calling him washed up. I think people have correctly pointed out that at now 39, he has slowed down.
Right.
But on the whole, we've been saying it on the show. I stand by it. If he has more consistent line mates and has a little cleaner bill of health, he'll be fine. He'll still be a very viable 2C for the Penguins and just in general. So I think those are two big factors: is he's got to be healthy and the line mates have to actually be worth a damn for him to do better. Because again, to mold it all together, he's not 28 anymore. He can't carry a line on his own. He's not going to take over games as consistently, if ever, like he used to.
Yeah.
But you put those two factors together and you're going to see a solid second line center. But that's the challenge now, is finding those consistent line mates who can help him elevate.
Yeah, but again, right now, there's still plenty of options. Rust and Rakell are still there, at least for now. Tommy Novak, we've talked about him, Ville Koivunen, Rucker McGroarty, Philip Tomasino, et cetera, et cetera. So at least for top 9 purposes, he will have options going into camp right now. Finally, we're going to end with this comment from Pen68. If Jari is not traded before the season, I think he will split starts 50-50 with Archer Shelovs and not be the workhorse during the season. That's only if he doesn't get traded before the season starts or during the season at some point. I think there is a way to that happening, but I do think Jari would have to struggle a bit, which, I mean, I kind of expect at this rate just because he's been very inconsistent throughout his career. But I can definitely see a lot of ways that Shelovs take some starts away from Jari. You saw what he did for the baby Canucks this year in the Calder Cup playoffs. There was a lot of potential there. We've seen what he was able to do a couple of seasons ago for the NHL Canucks against the Oilers in that second round series. A lot of potential there. It's also just fine-tuning some parts of his game to fit more for the National Hockey League. But he's the favorite to be the backup right now. And if he has a good camp, he will win that job. And especially if Jari starts struggling during the season, he will take starts from him.
For sure. And that's kind of the drum I've been beating for a long time about Tristan Jarry is I know I'm in the minority of this. I still think there's a serviceable NHL goalie in there, but we have seen that when his workload increases, his game decreases.
Right.
So if Shelovs can actually be a viable 1B and take a few starts here and there, I don't think Jari's going to return to all-star form. Let's not get carried away here, but being a serviceable NHL goalie, I think, is not out of the realm of possibility. I'm still doubtful about Jarry given the past couple of seasons, but again, the Penguins have needed, even, and I'm not even saying this from they're trying to win standpoint, just from a usage of talent standpoint. If you have someone behind Jarry who can take the reins for a little bit, it will help him. The problem is they haven't had that goalie in a really long time. In time, we'll also tell if Shelovs is that or not, because we've seen with him a lot of inconsistencies there. There's times where he looks like he could be a future Vezina winner. There's times where he looks like he should have his ceiling be the AHL. So this is one of the more curious things for me going into this season is how much or what happens with the goaltending, because there's about a million outcomes right now.
Right. And we still have to see what happens with Yoel Blomqvist during camp. Is he able to really push Shelovs for that backup role? Who starts in Wilkes-Barre? Who backs up that goalie? Who starts in Wheeling? There's still, again, a little bit of a logjam right now. But, hey, it's going to sort itself out at some point. And we're still about a month and a half away from training camp getting underway in Cranberry. But that will do it for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. Pat and I will be back with a fresh show for you guys next week to kick off the month of August. We're going to take Friday off, send you all into the weekend, and then we'll be back on Monday. So for Patrick Damp, I am Hunter Hodes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will be back on Monday.